The Abominable Love, a novel by Dr. A. Ahmed. This is an intriguing epic story which resonates with love, resilience, courage, and sacrifice. Copyrights. All rights are reserved. No part of this book may be reproduced, stored in a retrieval system, or transmitted in any form or by any means without the prior written permission of the author, except by a reviewer, who may quote brief paragraphs for a review to be printed in a public newspaper, general magazine, school journal, or university article. This tale is a work of fiction, but the entire novel is based on a real love story between an Arab girl and an African boy. All names, characters, places, and events are either the product of the author's imagination or used literary. Therefore, any resemblance to actual people, living or dead, events, or locales is merely coincidental. Chapter 32. The public protest by the citizens of the capital city. The legal representative Siham Khalil did not expect the death sentence to be issued against her defendant, the accused girl, Insaf Salah al-Junaid. She prepared herself to accept any prison sentence or corporal punishment for her client except physical annihilation. Therefore, the court's final verdict to impose the death penalty hit her like a major heart attack. She knelt down on the ground and began to cry. Her sympathy for Insaf moved her heart against the judge. Then she expressed her dissatisfaction with strong words. "Your final verdict is a terrible crime in itself. God will never forgive the court for convicting such an innocent girl. You have condemned every woman in Sudan. You have given men the right to enslave and abuse women in this country forever." The judge and his jurymen did not wait for the angry lawyer to finish her words of protest. They immediately got up and left the court. Four policemen escorted them out of the courtroom. Insaf has been forcefully dragged out of the courtroom by 4 massive guards and 2 armed policewomen. She screams and struggles to free herself from the 4 guards. After a short while, the courtroom became empty except for the lawyer Siham, who is screaming, wailing, and denouncing the court's death penalty on her defendant. She started slapping her face and pulling her hair. The African lover Deng ran into the courtroom. The sight of the crying lawyer confirmed his fear. He had already seen his Arab lover, Insaf, the convict, being forcefully dragged out of the courtroom by 4 huge guards and violently pushed into a police vehicle fortified with a guardrail, as if it were a monster vehicle. He saw her tears and heard her pleading for rescue and freedom. At first, he ran towards the police wagon, but the huge policewomen prevented him from reaching it and stopped him by force. He tried to hold on to the iron bars, but the car moved quickly and sped away from him. He fell hard on his back and hit the ground. He cut his forehead until blood flowed from it like hot acid. However, he got back to his feet and chased the police vehicle for some time. Finally, the injured African lover, Deng, abandoned his failed attempt to save his beloved Arab girl, Insaf, and rushed into the courtroom. He knelt next to the lawyer Siham, still crying bitterly for his unjustly condemned Arab friend. Likewise, the court's decision to hang the convicted Arab girl to death is shocking news to the public. Khartoum local radio announced the decision at exactly 11:30 at night, and the next morning it has been published by all local newspapers. The newspapers reported that the court acquitted Insaf of all charges except for the 2 charges of adultery with the Saudi Sheikh Abdo and the killing of the Sudanese pimp, Haja Shada Hassan. The newspapers did not explain how the criminal court reached this decision, which seems unpleasant to many people. Despite the unjust final ruling issued by the court, most of the people of Khartoum have already accepted the lawyer Siham Khalil's justifications for the killing of the Arab girl Insaf Salah al-Junaid the pimp, Haja Shada. Accordingly, there is a public outcry against the court's decision. Inside and outside the Triangle capital city, people disagreed with the final ruling issued by the criminal court. Only some Islamic groups such as Ansar al-Sunnah, the Muslim Brotherhood, and their women's branch called the Nasiba Sisters accepted it. The Sudanese Women's Rights Union led a march to the public palace and submitted a protest note to the President of Sudan. Many high school and university students joined this protest. The public protests and demonstrations continued for a week. Meanwhile, The lawyer Siham Khalil wrote a long letter of appeal and sent copies of it to the Supreme Court, the Sharia court, the body of judges and lawyers, Human Rights Watch, the Sudanese Women's Rights Union, and the President of the Democratic Republic of Sudan. The death sentence of the condemned Arab girl, Insaf Salah al-Junaid, 18 years old, is scheduled to be executed a week after the criminal court announced its final ruling. The lawyer Siham tried to challenge her client's age because she is a minor girl and Sudanese law does not allow the execution of a minor convict, but her appeal was rejected because Insaf was 18 years old when she killed the pimp, Haja Shava. The court ruled that the death sentence must be conducted next Friday afternoon in Cooper Central Prison. The convicted girl must be hanged to death inside the prison building. The prison administration announced through the media that the public would not be allowed to watch the execution. When less than 24 hours remained until the execution of the Arab girl sentenced to death, it happened that on Thursday afternoon, the Sudanese Women's Rights Union delivered its memorandum to the Sudanese president who took power through a military coup on June 30, 1989. On the morning of that same day, a large crowd of the members of the Women's Rights Union, human rights activists, university and school students, employees, and workers gathered in the palace's public garden. They surrounded Mr. President's office from morning until afternoon. At 4:30 p.m., His Excellency the President left his office and personally received the protest note. He immediately got into his car and headed to his residence at the military headquarters within the General Command of the Sudanese Army. As soon as the president left the presidential palace under heavy guard, the police, rapid support forces, and army armed forces dispersed the gathering using tear gas and long police batons. They even used live bullets and shot some demonstrators to death in the palace courtyards. These dead protesters were considered by the people as martyrs of freedom and the struggle for justice. At 10:30 p.m. the same night, all radio and television programs are interrupted to broadcast Mr. President's message live. For an hour, all radio stations and television channels broadcast national anthems and military marches. They also played recitations of verses and surahs of the Holy Quran with the voice of the famous Al-Azhari reciter Omar Ahmed. At exactly 11 o'clock at night, His Highness the President appeared in front of the cameras and addressed the public regarding the case of conviction for the death of the 18-year-old Arab girl, Insaf Salah al-Junaid. Mr. President reads his brief speech to the Sudanese nation from a white paper placed in front of him. In the name of God, the most gracious, the most merciful. In the name of the noble messenger, who is the seal of all prophets and messengers of Allah our Master and Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. Today, in my office, many women, male and female students, employees, and workers gathered inside the garden of the Republican Palace and submitted a request for pardon regarding a young Sudanese woman who was convicted by the criminal court of premeditated murder. I admit that due to my busy schedule, I did not hear about this young Arab woman accused until today. When I read the text of the petition for her clemency, I asked my secretary to request a transcript of the trial of the woman in question. At approximately 6 p.m., I received a transcript of the trial and final court decision sentencing her to death. I searched the files carefully and with great precision and read the list of charges brought against her by the Khartoum, Port Sudan, and Gadaref police authorities and the public prosecutor's request to convict her and the defense of her lawyer Siham Khalil. I did not find the Triangle Criminal Court's decision to be biased or unfair in any way. However, after reviewing the merits of the defense presented by her lawyer during 3 consecutive sessions, I found that the accused girl should be blamed in some cases, and we should pity her in others. Based on this, I decided to grant the girl sentenced to death by hanging a presidential pardon in the hope that she would improve her situation. I take this opportunity and ask all our Muslim women and girls to follow the teachings of our tolerant Islamic religion. I discovered that the problem of this young convict began when she disobeyed her parents and fell in love with a man before marriage. So I asked all our Muslim women, and even our Christian biblical sisters, to obey their parents, their husbands, and their religion. I repeat once again, I grant the Sudanese girl who was handed to death by hanging, Insaf Salah al-Junaid, a full presidential pardon. Therefore, she must be released tomorrow morning from the women's prison in Khartoum and go to her family free girl. However, I say to her and other sinners, as our noble messenger said to the infidels of Mecca when he released them, "Go, you are free, but if you return to your crimes, we will return to you with retaliation." At the end, I ask God Almighty and our noble prophet to bless our great Sudanese nation and protect our free women from the machinations of evil people and from following in the steps of the accursed Satan, for he has been a clear enemy of mankind. Chapter 33. The reunion of two eternal lovers who were wrongfully separated. The Arab girl condemned to death, Insaf, spent many horrifying days and frightful nights locked in her terrifying cell. She had been imprisoned in her isolation cell for more than 6 months, but she felt like she had been thrown into the bottomless pit for 6 lean years. However, since the day she heard that she was sentenced to death by hanging, she has not been able to sleep for even 2 hours straight. She knew and understood that she did not kill anyone except the pimp woman who tried to turn her into a kidnapped sex slave and locked her in her home to satisfy her greed for wealth by selling her young body to men, taking her virginity, and desecrating her purity. Therefore, Insaf was surprised when she heard the death sentence against her. Since then, she refused to eat food or drink water except by force. Every day, some violent guards forced a little food and a few drops of water into her dry mouth and empty stomach. They want to keep her alive for 7 days until the day she is hanged to death inside Cooper Central Prison. They don't want to be responsible for starving her to death. During her prolonged period of imprisonment, Insaf lost a lot of weight. Her face became pale, losing half of its beauty, and her body was robbed of its femininity and sexual appeal. She has not been able to wash her body and comb her hair since the day she was sentenced to death. After her condemnation, no one is allowed to visit her. Her African lover, Deng, came several times, but was always sent back without seeing her. He also did not eat any food or drink any water during those terrifying days. He was constantly crying over the loss of his beloved Arab friend, Insaf. During those months of inquiries, trials, and court sessions, his love for her was revived and strengthened. He visited her regularly in the women's jail. He provided her with all her necessary needs. He sold his car to cover her lawyer's fees and bought everything she needed, including clothes, shoes, soaps, toothbrushes, and toothpastes. He also traveled with the lawyer Siham Khalil to the cities of Gadaref and Port Sudan and paid all the costs of their trips together. Insaf also lived in the hope of proving her innocence so that she could be united with her first lover, Deng, as husband and wife. She thought that God had thwarted her 2 love affairs with the rich Arab Muslim boy Samir and the Coptic Christian boy William David because he wanted to marry her to her first African lover, Deng. Despite her displacement in Port Sudan and Khartoum, the Arab lover, Insaf, maintained her purity and virginity for him and him alone. Even the Muslim boy Deng believed that God prevented him from marrying the African Christian girl Susan because he wanted him to marry his Arab Muslim lover, Insaf. With this beautiful hope, the 2 eternal lovers waited for the end of the long trial. Finally came the fateful night, the day of the death sentence, which shattered their dreams and separated them, it seemed, forever. When Mr. President granted a pardon to the girl condemned to death, none of the lovers knew about it. That night, a few hours before the execution, Deng left his room in the university dorm and went to sit on the riverbank. He decided never to return to his room until the soul of his beloved girlfriend left this evil world. He tried hard not to imagine the noose pressing down on the neck of his delicate Arab lover and snatching her honorable soul from her sacred body. He wept bitterly when he imagined such a cruel sight and inhuman death of the only girl he has ever loved in his life. He completely believes in her innocence, purity, virginity, and courage, and in killing the lady pimp who wanted to strip her of her honor. She is the only Arab girl who loves him and does not discriminate against his African race, and not see him as a black-faced Negro slave. While her beloved friend Deng is sitting on the riverbank and mourning the fateful end of his beloved friend Insaf, 2 huge armed guards came to the cell of the girl condemned to death by hanging. When Insaf saw them, she started crying loudly and begged them not to take her to the gallows. She told them that she is just a teenage girl and that she had done nothing wrong to deserve to be executed at such an early age. She thought they are here to take her to be executed in the notorious Cooper prison, where many innocent men and women were hanged. She grabbed the iron bars of the door and tried to prevent them from entering her cell, which looked like a cave or a grave. Then the two huge guards took her out the door and shouted good news into her ears, but she did not hear their words. They forcefully dragged her to their office like a sheep is dragged to the slaughterhouse to be slaughtered. While she is screaming and begging for mercy, one of the guards put her big hand on Insaf's mouth and screamed, "Listen, you damned criminal girl sentenced to death by hanging, you have obtained a presidential pardon. You will not be hanged to death today or any other day. You are free now and can go home." The guard repeated those words many times before the girl, who is spared from execution, heard them and understood their meaning. "You can go now. You are free like a bird, let out of the iron cage," the same policewoman shouted. Insaf looked at her suspiciously. "Yes, you are a free prisoner. You can go now," said the other guard. "Where should I go, ma'am?" the freed girl Insaf asked innocently. "Go to hell, you damned murderous whore, if you are still homeless and without a place and your family disowns you and does not want you." Finally, the freed prisoner understood what the two guards said, so she turned her back, pulled her legs, and left the office. Insaf walked aimlessly inside the prison building. She could not believe that she was free, like a bird in the sky. She looked at her hands and feet. Her tear-filled eyes could no longer see or feel the long, heavy chains and shackles. Another guard saw her wandering aimlessly inside the accursed prison building, then directed her towards the exit. The freed Arab girl left the women's prison and entered one of the crowded streets of Khartoum. There is no lover or enemy there waiting to receive her or kill her, or anyone close to her Arab family who recognizes her. She wondered what happened to her dear African friend, Deng. The Arab girlfriend Insaf, who is released from death sentence, does not know where her African lover lives. She has no idea how to get to the house of Haj Abdullah, who pulled her out of the filthy garbage container. She walked a few steps and lost her way. She is hungry, tired, thirsty, and very weak. She started to feel dizzy. She struggled to stay on her feet, but her best efforts could not stop her body from falling. The freed prisoner lost consciousness and her unconscious body collapsed into the street crowded with cars, people, and animals. She fell into a dark, endless pit, just as happened the day she escaped from the murdered body of her friend Badria. Meanwhile, her African lover, Deng, left the riverbank, his eyes blinded by tears and his heart full of deep sorrow. Then he went to the women's prison to demand the body of his beloved Arab girlfriend, Insaf, who has been supposedly executed by hanging. He wants to give her a proper burial because her Arab family seems to have rejected and abandoned her and considered her a fallen, dead girl. He decided to bury her in one of the Islamic cemeteries in Khartoum instead of leaving her murdered body to the prison authority to bury it somewhere inside the prison cemetery, throw it in a hole elsewhere in the wilderness, or burn it into ashes like the corpse of a wild animal. Upon his arrival at the prison's main office, he has been informed of the presidential pardon and conditional release of his convicted girlfriend. The African lover Deng has become incredibly happy when he learned that his beloved Arab girlfriend, Insaf, has been granted a presidential pardon and released from her cell, and is now at large somewhere outside the women's prison. He left the prison and searched everywhere for her, but did not find her. Finally, he went to the house of the good Muslim man, Haj Abdullah. He knew his home address because he went there before the trial with the lawyer Siham Khalil. Haj Abdullah and his family had already learned the good news through the speech the president delivered at night. Then the old Haj accompanied the lover in his search until they finally found the freed prisoner unconscious in Omdurman Hospital. What happened to her unconscious body is the same thing that happened to her on the day she escaped from the murdered body of Badria, who was slain in an honor killing by her brother. However, the difference this time is that some people called the police and transported her unconscious body in an ambulance to the emergency department. When the Arab lover, Insaf, opened her eyes that evening, the first person she saw is her African lover, Deng. It is difficult to describe in human words their second meeting and reunion outside the prison. It is a reunion of two souls and two bodies brought together by a strong, sincere, and true love that cannot be described in words. She also saw Haj Abdullah and his family surrounding her bed in the hospital where she was once admitted and stayed without a visitor. Everyone shed tears of joy, sadness, and mixed emotions of ambivalence. They all embraced her for a long time and cried with her. On the same day, Insaf has been discharged from Omdurman General Hospital, which is the dirtiest and worst hospital in the world. When she entered Haj Abdullah's house, she jumped over a slaughtered sheep that the honorable family has given her as offering, thanking God for saving her from the gallows. The Arab family, which is reunited with the African boy Deng, celebrated the divine mercy on the honorable and chaste Arab girl, Insaf. They ate food, drank juice, and talked until late into the night. When the next day's sun rose over the house, the two eternal lovers, the African boy and the Arab girl, became officially engaged to each other. 2 weeks later, the good Muslim man, Haj Abdullah, accompanied the African boyfriend, Deng Majak Nasser, to the mosque and performed his Islamic marriage to his Arab girlfriend, Insaf Salah al-Junaid, in accordance with the Holy Quran and the Blessed Sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad. Chapter 34. The sad honeymoon of the Arab bride and her African groom. Since the day they were torn apart racially and mercilessly in the city of Gadaref at the hands of the cruel Arab father Salah al-Junaid, called Abu Sha'nab, the two intimate lovers, Insaf and Deng, were not able to be alone together until the day they are reunited in halal Islamic marriage. On the same day, the newlyweds left Haj Abdullah's house in the evening and headed towards a small hotel nearby. They decided to spend a few days and enjoy their honeymoon there. After that, they planned to rent a small, cheap place and live as a legitimate Muslim husband and his legitimate Muslim wife. The handsome African groom decided to postpone his medical studies and find a job to support his beautiful Arab bride. As the taxi drove along the river shore, the beauty of the Nile River inspired the newly married lovers with joy and happiness, filling their hearts with noble and indescribable feelings. They are completely occupied looking into each other's eyes. They want to dissolve into one soul and become one body. Deng and Insaf long for the taxi to grow wings and become like a carpet of wind for the lover Aladdin and his beloved Badr al-Badr, and fly them to the hotel where the real fun of their honeymoon will begin. They want to eat from the tree of paradise and taste the apple fruit that they were deprived of as a result of their so-called abominable love. Finally, they broke both ethnic and racial barriers and became a Muslim couple after they were considered unmarriageable lovers. They long to be alone in one hotel room, even for one night in their lives. The African groom's hands are busy touching his Arab bride's smooth cheeks, her long black hair, and her beautiful lips. Several times, their strong love led them to embrace and kiss each other. Whenever they did this, they reminded themselves that they are still in a public place. They know that it is against the law of etiquette to hug and kiss in a public place, even for married lovers. Therefore, they waited impatiently in each other's arms until the taxi driver arrived at their final destination and dropped them off in front of the small hotel. The beautiful bride, Insaf, and the handsome groom, Deng, followed her into the hotel, full of joy. They knew that the peak of their honeymoon fun would begin in a few moments, and then they could live happily ever after, with nothing to separate them. They had already planned what to do during their honeymoon. They want to spend 7 days at the hotel in Khartoum City. The groom promised his bride to take her on a sightseeing tour around the capital city of Sudan. On the 8th day, they will travel by an express bus to the city of Gadaref to visit their old friends and see the places where they used to meet each other on the sidewalk of the road while going back and forth from their schools for boys and girls. From Gadaref, they will travel by the train of Worry to Port Sudan City and spend some time with the police officer Khalid's family. The runaway Arab girl, Insaf, wants to return to Auntie Khadija, Sister Sulwa, and the police officer Khalid Yahya. She wants to apologize to them for the disaster and scandal that she caused to them on the day of her engagement party to the rich young man, Samir Wad Masood. Finally, the couple will return to Khartoum City where they can rent a small nest and live happily ever after. However, as soon as the two newly married lovers, the black African groom Deng and the white Arab bride Insaf, entered the hotel holding hands, they became aware of the many eyes staring at them. Those eyes do not show admiration and congratulation, but rather astonishment and anger. The newlyweds ignored those eyes that looked at them as if they are aliens descended from another planet or two animals that have escaped from their cages in the zoo. They walked directly to the reception desk and asked to book a room for a week. "Yes, John, what do you want?" The receptionist asked sarcastically the African groom, looking at him mockingly. "My name is not John. I am Ding Majak Nasser," the groom answered innocently. "What do you want, Banjas Ding?" "We want a double bedroom for 7 days." "Sorry, man. We don't allow couples to stay here unless they are married. This is my wife, Insaf. We got married today." "You have to prove it to me. You cannot walk in here in this hotel with a girl and tell me she's your wife. If you don't believe me, you can ask her." "Listen, Banjas. I will not book you a room unless you show me your marriage certificate. First of all, my name is not Banjas, nor am I a little boy, so you should talk to me with that name, which in the Dinka language means a child. I have already told you that my name is Deng Majak Nasser. I don't care if your name is James, Kamis, Juma, Kuku, or Tia. If you cannot produce your marriage certificate, get the hell out of here before I call the security guards and kick you out in an undignified manner. I want you to show me any couple who booked here and showed their marriage certificate before you welcome them as guests at this hotel. This is a completely different matter. You're a Southerner and this girl is a Northerner. In other words, you are a Negro and she is an Arab. Your marriage, if it is valid at all, I have every reason to doubt the legitimacy of your doubtful marital relationship. Do you want to tell me that there is a law in this country that prevents a Southern African boy from marrying a Northern Arab girl? I did not say there is such a law, but I have never seen in my life a white Arab girl married a black Negro boy like you. We will file a complaint with the manager against your disgusting racist attitudes towards our legal Islamic marriage. The manager is not in his office now. Come tomorrow, bring your marriage certificate, and meet him." During all this time, the Arab bride Insaf is bowing her head and looking down. She saw the male guests got up from their chairs and came and surrounded them while the female guests stayed away. The grooms laughed, mocked, and enjoyed the conversation between the African groom, Ding, and the receptionist, while their brides remained seated in their chairs, whispering their racist conversations about the Arab bride, Insaf. Like burning tongues of fire, their eyes searched her body from head to toe as if she is a naked prostitute brought from the street. Some bold Arab women even spat the shame from their mouths. The Arab wife, Insaf, felt insulted by their whispers against her and the laughter of their men at her African husband, Deng. Heavy tears forced themselves out of her beautiful eyes. She tried to hide her hurt feelings, but she couldn't. "Deng," Insaf shouted angrily as the words came out of her mouth forcefully. "Let's go to another hotel." With uncontrollable anger, the African groom reluctantly left the racist receptionist and went out with his Arab bride outside the hotel, not holding hands as they had done when they arrived. That night, the newly married lovers, Deng and Insaf, tried their luck at 7 hotels. In each one, they were suspected and questioned about the nature of their marital relationship and challenged to prove it. At 4:30 a.m., the newlywed couple finally lost hope. They hesitated to return to Haj Abdullah's house at such an early hour on the new day. They asked the 7th taxi driver to take them to the riverbank. With exhausted bodies and broken hearts, the newlywed lovers sat on a bench on the riverbank. The groom, Ding, asked his bride, Insaf, to lie down on the seat and put her head on his lap. Then he took out his coat and covered her body from the frigid river breeze. Fortunately, the newlywed couple's problem is resolved after 3 days when Haj Abdullah went to the mosque and met the imam who performed their halal Islamic marriage and obtained their legal marriage certificate. During those 3 days of waiting, the Arab bride, Insaf, stayed at the home of Haj Abdullah and the African groom, Deng, in the dorm of the Faculty of Medicine at the University of Khartoum. On the fourth evening of their wedding, the couple left Hajj Abdullah's house and went again to look for a hotel. Their official Islamic legal marriage certificate allowed them the possibility of obtaining a modest room with a small bed in a cheap inn called Lakunda Al-Ai Shish on the outskirts of the triangular capital city of Sudan. The owner of the motel is a southern Christian from the Dinka tribe, to which the African groom belongs. This is the reason behind his acceptance of a black Negro husband who married a white Arab wife. Although the African Negro innkeeper owner allowed them to check in, they felt the strong prejudice of his Arab employees against their marital union, which is rare occurrence in the north of the country. Instead of whispering and expressing their love for each other, the couple spent long hours discussing the insurmountable racial problem facing them. They tried hard to find a solution to it. They asked each other how they could walk in the streets while the racist Arabs of the north staring at them. How can they convince anyone who doubts the credibility of their marital relationship? They cannot carry their Islamic marriage certificate and show it to anyone who questions the nature of their marital union. They know without their legal marriage certificate, they will be harassed and ridiculed by everyone. On the next morning, the newly married lovers had breakfast at the Lakunda Al-Ai Shish motel and left. They have decided, during their honeymoon, to go on a tour to see the beautiful sightseeing attractions in the cosmopolitan city of their country. To save money, they decided to use local transportation. The first bus they took happened to be jam-packed and very crowded. They have to force their way in. The racist eyes met them like the rays of the sweltering summer sun. The women's racist whispers about the nature of their union entered their ears like hot acid. The lovers stood inside the bus and held the supporting bars. Some scoundrels have disturbed the beautiful Arab bride, Insaf. They touched her big buttocks and groped her high-raised breasts. Her African groom, Ding, is forced to fight with some of those thugs who harassed his lovely life partner. To avoid further insurmountable problems, the couple decided to change the bus. At the next stop, they got off and rested for a while. After their rest time has passed, they boarded another bus, which is less crowded. Unfortunately, the only seats available for them are in front of two drunks sitting behind them. The two drunk men are singing an obscene song when the two lovers, Insaf and Deng, took the front seats. As soon as their eyes saw the newly married couple, their song stopped and instead, they engaged in an intense argument. "What is this?" one of the two drunk Arab men asked. "A white circumcised Arab girl with a black uncircumcised Negro slave." The other drunkard replied, "Yes, sir, and they are holding hands together as if they are the slave Negro Anter and the Arab girl Abla. She's a slutty northern Arab whore that the black southern slave picked up off the Nile Street." "You are a stupid, contemptible, worthless bastard," Ding shouted at the racist Arab perpetrator and got up and challenged him into a fight. The African groom continued, "This Arab girl is my lawful Muslim wife, and if you call her a whore and a slut again, I will cut out your tongue." "Please, sir, don't bother yourself with what these useless people say. As the saying goes, don't take drunk people for what they say," answered another southern gentleman. These apologetic words calmed the righteous anger of the African husband and made his insulted Arab wife stand up and ask him to leave the bus. Then the newly married couple left that bus with frowning faces and decided to continue their sightseeing tour by taxi. They have concluded that using public transportation would always put them in contact with the racist Arab people. Then they took a taxi and traveled to the Chinese Friendship Cinema Hall. They bought their tickets for the first show of the day. It is a popular Hindi movie called Kalia. In the Hindi language, Kalia means a black person, and the hero of the famous Indian movie is Amitabh Bachchan. Then the couple went to the cafeteria to have soft drinks. Even inside the cafeteria, Sudanese Arabs teased them and made fun of their suspicious marital relationship. When the Indian film, which they did not like because its events revolved around the real-life story of a notorious black Christian Indian gang leader named Anthony Kalia, ended, the couple wondered where to go next. They wished they could go somewhere where people couldn't harass them with sarcastic remarks and racist insults. Then the African groom, Deng, left his Arab bride, Insaf, standing alone in front of the Friendship Hall Theater and went to buy some sandwiches for their lunch meals. While the Arab bride Insaf is waiting, an old man approached her and greeted her very politely. "How are you, my little daughter?" asked the old man. Insaf replied with a smile, "I'm fine, uncle." The old man continued in a louder voice, "My daughter, who is that man who was holding your hand a few minutes ago?" "That is my husband, Ding." "What did you say, my daughter?" "I have told you, uncle, that man who was holding my hand is my husband, Ding." "That black man is your husband?" "Yes, uncle. We got married a few days ago." "Why did you do that, my daughter? Are there no Arab men in this country, and that was why you married an African man like that black-faced Negro?" The Arab bride Insaf felt extremely insulted by the racist words of the rude old Arab man. Therefore, she turned her face and walked away from the despicable racist old geezer. However, the old man stood up and continued to stare evenly until he saw the so-called black-faced Negro Ding joining the beautiful white Arab girl Insaf. When he saw the black African and the white Arab lovers holding hands, he slammed his hands together and rebuked Satan and spat on the earth. After seeing the angry face of his Arab bride, the African groom asked, "What happened to you, my sweetie?" "Nothing, dear. Let's go back to the hotel. I don't want to go sightseeing anymore. Every man and every woman in this city is disgustingly racist."